There is a specific kind of silence that follows a bride standing up at her own reception and walking toward the microphone. It is not the good kind of silence. Not the everyone is so moved kind. It is the something is very wrong and nobody knows what to do with their hands kind. 204 people in that room, and you could hear the ice shifting in the water glasses. Nina had not planned to give a speech. She had planned to sit beside Marcus, eat the cake she spent 3 months choosing, and dance with her mother to the song they picked together when Nina was 14. She had planned for this to be the happiest night of her life, but 20 minutes ago, Marcus had laughed, not at a joke someone told, not at something sweet or silly. He laughed because his mother leaned over during the toast and said loud enough for 3 tables to hear, "Well, at least the flowers are nice." They distract from the bride's side of the room, if you know what I mean, and Marcus, her Marcus, the man who was supposed to stand between her and the world. He laughed. A short, sharp laugh, the kind that says, "I heard it and I agree, but I do not want to be the one who said it." Then his mother added the line that ended everything. She looked directly at Nina's mother, Helen, who was sitting quietly in a simple navy dress she had sewn herself, and said to the woman beside her, "That is not a mother. That is a mistaken address." Helen heard it. Nina could tell because her mother's hand went still on the table. Not a flinch, not a gasp. Just a woman going very quiet the way women go quiet when they have been humiliated so many times they have learned to hold the pain inside like a fist. Helen did not look up. She did not cry. She just moved her napkin to her lap and stared at her plate like she was waiting for the moment to pass the way. She had waited for every hard moment to pass her entire life. And something inside Nina broke. Not the fragile kind of breaking, the clean kind. The kind where you suddenly see everything clearly for the first time. Nina had met Marcus 4 years ago at a conference. He was smart and confident and made her laugh in a way that felt like sunlight after a long winter. He came from money, not the quiet kind. The kind that shows up in cufflinks and country club memberships and mothers who inspect your nail beds during dinner. His mother, Vivian, had never liked Nina. She never said it directly because Vivian did not operate that way. She operated in suggestions. "Is that what you were wearing? Oh, I did not realize you went to a state school. How interesting that your mother works at a dry cleaner." Everything Vivian said had a second meaning, tucked inside it like a razor blade in gift wrap. Nina told herself it did not matter. She told herself Marcus was different from his family. She told herself that love was enough to bridge the gap between a woman who sewed her own curtains and a family that hired someone to pick their curtains from a catalog. But the signs were always there. When Nina brought Helen to meet the family for the first time, Vivian looked her up and down and said to Marcus in the kitchen, not quietly enough, "She seems sweet," in a simple sort of way. When Helen offered to help with wedding planning, Vivian smiled tightly and said, "Oh, that is so kind, but we have a coordinator." Like Helen had offered to perform surgery with a butter knife. When Nina chose her wedding dress, a beautiful but not expensive one, Helen altered it by hand, added lace from her own mother's dress, spent weeks on it. Every stitch was a love letter. Vivian saw it at the fitting and said, "Is that vintage?" Meaning, "Is that old?" Meaning, "Did you really wear something used to my son's wedding?" Nina swallowed every one of those moments. She swallowed them the way her mother taught her, with grace, with patience, with the belief that being good would eventually be enough. Helen had raised Nina alone. She worked 2 jobs for most of Nina's childhood, the dry cleaning shop during the day, overnight stocking at a grocery store 3 nights a week. She never complained, she never dated, she never took a vacation. Every dollar went to Nina. School supplies, winter coats, college applications. The $500 deposit for Nina's first apartment that Helen paid in crumpled 20s she had been saving in a coffee can for 2 years. Helen did not talk about sacrifice. She just did it, quietly, relentlessly, like it was breathing. Nina knew all of this. She carried it with her everywhere, and every time Vivian made a comment about Helen being simple or sweet or quaint, Nina felt it like a knife between her ribs. But she stayed quiet because Marcus said his mother would come around, because Marcus said, just give it time, because Marcus said she does not mean it like that. Except she did mean it like that, and on the night of the wedding, Vivian finally said it loud enough that pretending was no longer possible. Nina stood up from the head table. Marcus looked at her. Confused at first, then nervous, then something darker crossed his face. The look of a man who just realized he cannot control what happens next. Nina walked to the front of the room. The DJ saw her coming and instinctively handed her the microphone, because when a bride reaches for a mic at her own wedding, you do not ask questions. You just hand it over. The room went quiet. 204 faces, some smiling, some confused, some already reaching for their phones. Nina did not scream. She did not cry. She spoke clearly and calmly the way her mother taught her, because Helen always said, you do not need to be loud to be heard. You just need to mean it. I want to say something, Nina began. I was not planning to speak tonight, but something happened a few minutes ago that I cannot sit with. She paused. The room was perfectly still. My mother is sitting at table 6. She is wearing a navy dress that she made herself. She has been sewing since she was 12 years old. She made my wedding dress too. Every stitch by hand. She used lace from my grandmother's dress because she wanted me to carry something real down the aisle. Nina's voice was steady. Helen's eyes were wide. She was shaking her head slightly like she was trying to stop whatever was coming. My mother raised me alone. She worked 2 jobs for most of my childhood so I could have a life she never had. She never asked for credit. She never asked for recognition. She just showed up. Every single day. Nina turned slightly toward the table where Vivian sat. Vivian's face was frozen in that specific expression of a woman who is calculating whether to look offended or confused. A few minutes ago, someone at this reception described my mother as a mistake in a dress. A gasp moved through the room like wind through grass. Heads turned. People looked at each other. Vivian's husband gripped the edge of the table, and the man I was about to spend my life with heard it, and he laughed. Nina looked at Marcus. He was pale. His mouth was open slightly. His hand was on the table like he was bracing for impact. Marcus, Nina said, not with anger, with clarity. I watched you laugh while your mother humiliated mine, my mother who has given me everything, my mother who made this dress with her own hands, my mother who is the reason I am standing here at all. She paused and let the silence do its work. If you cannot stand up for her, you cannot stand up for me. And if your family sees my mother as less than, they will see me as less than. And I will not build a marriage on that. The room was frozen. Someone's phone buzzed, and the sound was almost violent in the quiet. A child at a far table whispered too loudly, "Is the wedding over?" Nina set the microphone down on the table gently. Not a drop, a placement. Then she walked to table 6. Helen was crying now, silent tears running down her face. Nina crouched beside her mother and took her hand. Mom, we are leaving. Helen shook her head. Nina, you do not have to do this for me. Yes, I do, Nina said. You did it for me my whole life. She helped her mother stand. Helen's hands were shaking. Nina put her arm around her and they walked out of the ballroom together. Behind them, the room erupted, not in applause, in chaos. Chairs scraping, voices overlapping, Vivian's voice cutting through. This is ridiculous. She is being dramatic. Marcus caught up to them in the lobby. Nina, wait, Please, just let me explain. Nina stopped. She turned. Marcus looked smaller than she had ever seen him. His suit that had seemed so sharp 2 hours ago now looked like a costume. Explain what? Nina asked. That you heard your mother call mine a mistake, and you thought it was funny? I did not think she meant... Marcus started. You knew exactly what she meant. You have always known. You just did not think I would do anything about it. Marcus reached for her hand. Nina stepped back. Do not, she said quietly, and that one word carried more weight than anything she had said into the microphone. They left. Nina drove her mother home. They did not speak for most of the ride. Helen sat in the passenger seat looking out the window. Finally, she said softly, "The dress really did turn out beautiful, though." Nina laughed, a real laugh. The kind that comes out when you are exhausted and heartbroken and somehow still standing. Yes, Mom. It really did. That night, Nina sat on her mother's couch in her wedding dress eating leftover soup from the fridge. Helen had changed into her pajamas and was sitting beside her with a cup of tea. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that does not feel empty. It feels honest. I am sorry I ruined the wedding, Helen said. Nina put down her spoon. You did not ruin anything. They did. Helen was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I always worried I was not enough for you, that you deserved a family with more money, more connections, more everything. Nina took her mother's hand. Mom, you sewed lace from Grandma's dress onto mine at 2 a.m. because you wanted me to feel her with me. You are more than enough. You are everything. The next morning, the fallout began. Not the emotional kind, the financial kind. Nina worked as a procurement director at a logistics company. She had not thought about this detail when she walked out of the wedding, but Marcus's family had. Specifically because Marcus's father's construction firm held a contract with Nina's company, a significant one that Nina had helped negotiate. Nina did not pull the contract out of revenge. She did not make a phone call or send an angry email. She simply informed her company's legal team that there was a potential conflict of interest given her personal situation and that the contract should be reviewed independently. The review found irregularities, not because Nina planted them, because they were there. Inflated invoices, delayed deliverables. Quality issues that had been quietly overlooked because the family connection smoothed everything over. The contract was terminated properly, legally, without drama, just facts on paper. Marcus's father lost his largest client. Within 3 months, the firm was restructuring. Within 6 months, Marcus was no longer driving the car his father bought him. Vivian's charity luncheons got quieter. The invitations slowed. The circle that had once treated them like royalty began to treat them like a cautionary tale. Marcus called Nina once, 3 months after the wedding. His voice was thin. I lost everything because of you. Nina listened. Then she said, You lost everything because you laughed. She hung up and blocked the number. Vivian tried a different approach. She sent a handwritten letter to Helen, not an apology. A negotiation she wrote that she hoped they could put this behind them. That family is family. That words said in the heat of the moment should not define them. Helen read the letter at her kitchen table, then she folded it neatly and put it in the recycling bin. She did not respond. A year later, Nina's life looked different. Smaller in some ways, bigger in the ways that matter. She had a new apartment, a promotion at work, a few close friends who knew the whole story and loved her more for it. She was not dating, she was not looking, she was just living. Quietly, steadily, the way her mother taught her. Helen visited every Sunday. She brought pastries from the bakery near her house and pretended she had not spent the entire morning picking out the perfect ones. They sat on Nina's small balcony and drank coffee and talked about nothing important. Sometimes they sat in silence, the comfortable kind, the kind you earn. One Sunday, Helen brought something else, a small frame with a photo inside. Nina and Helen at the wedding, before everything happened. They were standing together in the hallway outside the ballroom. Helen was adjusting the lace on Nina's sleeve. Nina was looking down at her with a half smile. Neither of them was looking at the camera. They were just two women in a moment that belonged only to them. Helen set it on the table between their coffee cups. I found this on the photographer's website, she said. She posted the previews before everything. Nina stared at it. Her throat tightened. You look beautiful, Mom. Helen smiled. So do you. They sat there for a while. The morning light was warm. The coffee was good. And for the first time in a long time, neither of them felt like they had something to prove. So what do you think? Did Nina go too far or not far enough? Tell me in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, subscribe. I will see you in the next one.